My name is Adam Bean, working with Java since 1995, and the strange thing is I still like Java programming language, and attempt to spend as much time as only possible in projects. And yeah, this is what I do. And mostly Java E projects, and the recent time also, of course, WYSIWYG and then JavaFX right now. So in the last year, I thought about how we can streamline JavaFX development, and this is actually what I would like to explain you today. Good story, I wrote 2 recent books, and sad story is they have nothing to do with JavaFX. So you can buy them, but they are more Java E related. And I do from time to time workshops on the Munich airport, and actually the last time there were some developers from San Francisco, which is crazy, but I really appreciate it. And on that note, I brought some t-shirts with me. This is Airborne Developer. I actually thought about this after I was already in car, because all of us are airborne, right? This is hack, fly. So actually, the best question will get a t-shirt. If you ask a good question, I will give you a t-shirt. If there are no questions, I will give someone a t-shirt who didn't disturb me a lot or something like this, because for Norway, I will never take the t-shirts back. They're just way too heavy and the luggage is too small, okay? So, what is enterprise? So I get a lot in my projects who are talking about enterprise. What is the difference about enterprise and consumer apps? And I think the main difference is in consumer apps, user experience is everything. And in enterprise, the domain experts or the department who has money is everything. So enterprise apps are mainly, in my case, use case driven, and user experience, you know, and shiny things came last, at least in my projects. No one cares about animations in grids or something like this. This is what I understand in enterprise. So what it means, I think this is the only talk at Java 1 about JavaFX without any animations and whatever. Just concentrate on actually proper implementation of model view controller pattern. This is what I would like to talk about today and show you a little bit of code. So don't be disappointed, there will be no 3D animation, some transformation, nothing. It will be, at the most, you will see probably some system.println, okay? So don't be disappointed. And what I forgot to mention, I'm just a one-man show. I have nothing to do with Oracle, whatever. I'm Java partisan, I have nothing to do with company, just a singleton, one-man show, whatever, contractor, freelancer, okay? So model view controller. Why not just say model view controller and the talk is over? So the problem with model view controller is it is somehow defined, but no one knows how the code looks like. So in my experience in Swing and JavaFX and whatever projects is, everyone told me, oh, we do MVC, and it was totally different code base. There was even no similarities between the projects. And the problem with that is not usable in my projects, because in my eyes, architectures should be executable almost. So if you are just to tell you build MVC and everything is fine, there is no added value. So we can skip the pattern altogether. So what I would like to attempt you today is to provide as hard as possible ideas so they are almost executable. They are in fact executable, and we talk a little bit about this. So this is actually the main idea. Clear definition and clear rules, and not fuzzy patterns like we did before. So there is a new pattern, model view presenter, which is actually nothing else than model view controller redefined, or the first time more clearly defined. The sad story is MVP is dead. So also I see lots of articles and I don't know, blog posts about model view presenter. Martin Fowler retired the pattern in 2006. And the good story is they split actually the pattern into other patterns. Supervising control and passive view. And this is what I would like to introduce first. So they are actually passive view and supervising controller. And the question is why we have 2 patterns right now. And the answer is because MVC was not enough. And what passive view means is, or supervising controller is, you do as little as only possible in the view, in the controller, and implement whatever you want in the view. And the passive view is other way around. So the view does nothing, and the controller does everything. So we have actually 2 flavors of MVP. And why we do it? Because, for instance, of testability. This is the driving factor behind MVP. if you would write unit tests for JavaFX applications, you should be able to test the presentation logic without opening the UI. This is the idea behind. And I misused MVP, or supervising control and passive view, for another purpose, which is really interesting. I will introduce a little bit later. So why I'm actually excited about this patent has something to do with testability, but I would say in real world, probably 20% of all controllers are unit tested in Swing, I would say. This is actually a good number. In usual enterprise project, no one tests actually controllers. This is the sad story. And who tests controllers in Swing and JavaFX? You see, there are a few attendees, but the sad story is this is not actually the mainstream. And if someone writes unit tests, this is not a joke. What I see already is there are no asserts, and I ask why you are not writing asserts, and the answer is because the build breaks then. So this is not a joke. It's a huge project recently. So passive view is presenter is everything. So the presenter synchronizes the view with the model, and the view is as dumped as dynamic as only possible. So we have supervising controller, which is pragmatic. In Swing, would it mean, for instance, what supervising controller would be is like you have something like JPanel or JFrame, which implements an interface and exposes everything which is possible in the view through this interface, and the controller does I would say what that control does. The view does something like converting action performed to OK. So the controller has a method OK or safe, and the view translates the Swing action performed to OK. This would be in Swing, and in JavaFX exactly the same, right? And in passive view, nothing happens in the view. So everything is delegated to controller. It's a very radical approach, but also possible. Okay? A hint why I'm excited about this, because we have in JavaFX something like sim builder, which generates code, and the question is how to deal with that. Can we use what you see is what you get editors or not? And this is actually the next thought, how to integrate code which is generated by another tool in pragmatic way to our project. Questions so far? Think about the t-shirts with the propeller. No questions? Okay. Passive view, presentation model. Presentation model is not another pattern, it's like a sub pattern, and the whole idea is you have something like a data transfer object per view. So the state of the view is saved in the presentation model. So, and usually the presentation model is different from the domain model, because in the presentation model you could also maintain the state of the view, which is locked, what is locked and not what is, invalid and what is valid. In the domain model object, it is just a pure business logic, business state. There is no notion which is valid and invalid. There is no presentation logic. So presentation model is a domain model for the presentation tier, and domain model is the model for the business logic. Crystal clear? And this is actually what I would like a little bit to talk a little bit, because this is often forgotten. Because this model view controller, the question is, what is the model? Right? Is it the presentation model or is it the domain model? And in some Swing application, it was the domain model. In the other project, it was the presentation model. And in my case, I think it is better to start with the presentation model. Okay, questions? There will be no questions afterwards. And the reason is I have to move to my next session, more serious one about Java E. So, so I have to leave early. Not earlier than you, but on time. So model view presenter, and actually model view presenter and a service is what we need. In JavaFX is the idea, how to communicate with the backend. In enterprise, I would assume we're not building fat clients, which are standalone, isolated. Usually, we have to talk to the backend. So what we need in enterprise JavaFX is something like a business delegate, the old pattern, because you won't like probably to talk directly via SOAP. I mean, you wouldn't use SOAP either, but sometimes there is SOAP and you have to reuse it. So what is the best cases? Just to write a business delegate and Pojo, which wraps the SOAP and hides the SOAP details. The same is true actually for REST, JAX or REST. You don't like to write over and over again, client, build a new client, and so forth, right? And Eremire, Korban, initial context, whatever. So you have to hide somewhere, and I called it service. So what it is in context of JavaFX, actually, it is a singleton. A singleton, this was business delegate, was singleton as well, right? And the singleton talks to the backend and gives us data. And the data are usually domain objects. Not presentation model, domain object. That's the idea. So service has nothing to do with JavaFX, nor something with Java. It's just a poacher, a singleton, which gives us a data or communicates with the backend. I will show you code later. So I try to be organized in this topic, so in this talk. Usually it's very chaotic, but now just slides and done code. Right? Questions? Everyone agreed? Perfect. Wow.
So your testing, is it on the data that you're receiving from your back end, or is it actually over the view of the presentation?
What I will show you later is like there is a view and there is presenter, and the presenter talks somehow to the service. And sometimes the presenter fetches the data from the service and puts the data to presentation model. If this was your question.
Yes, but is there an assumption that it's being presented?
Assumptions that are going presented. Assumption.
For instance, I have a HTML client, so we're using HTML unit in order to test to see that what is being built is actually what we want it to be. I mean, there are problems with it, but it seems to me that you're getting the data from the service using JavaFX, and then you're testing that the data is right, but is it actually presented correctly?
Oh, yeah. For this purpose, you would have to test the presenter and whether it is correctly presented or visible or not. I would use real humans for that, because automating, there's JavaFX. This is a JavaFX testing framework. But if you automate everything, it's really hard to automate, the whole UI experience. And sometimes it is too slow, or the latency is not enough. I would just, invest in students or something and just test it. Yeah, really. This would be my pragmatic approach. You can automate everything, but the user experience cannot be automated, I think. Okay. But you get a S small, right? Small size?
I like
M, okay, perfect. Oh, stickers. If you get stickers, you get later. So come back to me after this thing and laptop stickers. So. And you get M afterwards. So model view presenter is what we need. And actually, what I have a paper saving device here. So the idea is we have a view, we have a presenter, which is very pragmatic. How it exactly looks like, I will show a little bit later. And the presenter needs actually the service, which is actually a business delegate, and a presentation model. And the presentation model is nothing else than a view-specific data transfer object. This is actually what worked really well in my projects, and you can do whatever you want to make the view happy here. And the real data is coming from the backend and from JAX-RS or SOAP or whatever, and it could be a little bit different to the presentation model. So there is actually, I think, there will be N to M relation between presentation model and the domain model. Who knows? Could be subset, superset, or whatever. Whatever is convenient to you. So, and what is the benefit, if you think about this? The benefit is I don't have any mapping in the backend. So I expose which is actually UI independent to the front end, whatever. Usually, we don't have just JavaFX. Usually, you will get another client, HTML5 client, which reuses the same JAX-RS service, and just making this JavaFX dependent is not a very good idea. Okay? Perfect. So I'm still not satisfied. The problem is you write over and over again. So what you will have to do, you will have to write views, presenters, models by hand, and which is actually good. But the problem is how to wire them together. So, and what I like in my projects are clear naming conventions. So I say, okay, let's say we build something like Session Manager. Then the idea is we create a package session. There is one package per view, period. And view can be a panel or a frame. It's something isolated, right? So one package per view. The name of the package is the name of the view. Within the package, I have always 3 classes. Actually, 2 classes and 4 files. The name would be customer presenter, for the presenter, customer view for the view, customer fxml is something interesting, and customer CSS, which is optional. And everything looks the same. And I did it in, on the backend, for instance, for Java EE, structuring the similar way, and it worked perfectly. In several projects, we did the same with JavaFX, and we were actually pretty fast because there were no questions left, right? So this is what we like to do. And the next hint is the presentation model is a singleton. So what you can do it, you can misuse or reuse the presentation model to communicate between views, which is also very convenient. So if you have two views and you would like to share state, like you have a chart and a table, how to do this? You can reuse the presentation model. Okay? Questions so far? So the next idea is actually automate everything, and we provide clear naming conventions. So this is convention over configuration. It means there should be nothing should be configured, and we derive as much as only possible from the class names, from naming, and from the context. Questions so far? This is the next idea.
Do you not find singletons problematic with testing?
Very problematic. And the solution for that is, actually singleton is the beginning. What I'm going to show you, it is not a singleton, it's a flyweight. So a flyweight pattern is like, there was in the Gang of Four from Gamma was described like, there is no need to have multiple instances from the character A. So you have some context, or in Java string, the string pool is also flyweight pattern, for instance. So the idea is you have to do something to have exactly one instance of a class without being singleton. And what I did is, I will show you later, is I reused this JSR 250 annotations. So there are two annotations, post-construct and pre-destroy. They are coming with JDK. And the idea is the class exists once, post-construct is invoked, and then pre-destroy. And this is effectively a singleton, but in unit tests, you don't have to invoke post-construct. So this is the idea. It comes later, but you medium, or you can, okay. And the next story is, I spend a lot of time on the server, why not inject everything? And we have a standard, which is actually even comes with Maven. So Maven 3.01, the recent Maven, understands dependency injection plugins with @inject. Eclipse does that. It's like, why not this? Why not just inject the presentation model or service to your presenter? And say, okay, then we need a framework and I don't know what. And the funny answer is, because of some features of JavaFX, we just need one class. No frameworks, no dependencies, nothing. Otherwise, I wouldn't talk about this. I hate frameworks, XML, and altogether everything, right? So what I would like to show you, it is very simple to use @inject and inject whatever you want, and really whatever we want. And what we would like to inject is other presenters, services, or presentation models. And this worked perfectly. And I would like to show you what I did. And everything, one class was open sourced, so but you cannot call it framework. It's a class work or something, but not a framework. One class is not a framework, I think. So the next problem is with JavaFX. I would really like to use Scene Builder. Scene Builder is a free tool. What was released since there is a version 1.1, and what it actually does, I can draw whatever I want, and then I can start it, and it's done. So, and I had really bad experience with that. So the best, what you see is what you get tool was NetBeans Matisse. It was not perfect because sometimes it blew up and we had to start over with that. So there were some workarounds with Subversion or whatever, or Git. But the problem with Matisse was it generated a lot of code. And the code that was generated doesn't belong to me, it belongs to NetBeans. So our projects were effectively dependent on NetBeans, which is always a very bad idea. To be dependent on something which not belongs to you, right? And the genius idea from Oracle engineers was that the scene builder works according to inversion of control. So it doesn't generate the code. What it only does, it actually provides configuration for a factory, and the factory comes with JavaFX. And the name of the factory is fxml loader. So how it works in JavaFX is there is a scene graph, and a scene graph is something like, a tree of JPanels, something like this. This is a scene graph. There are nodes. And what you can do, in the past, I created a scene graph by hand. So you can have one node, the other nodes. You can have here text fields and buttons. Everything is a node in JavaFX. And you can construct this using your own factories. Just say, new node, add, and you are done. Or you can say, fxml loader, here is the configuration, give me this, and you return this without knowing how it looks like. So what it actually means, we can switch between generated code and manually crafted code, which is actually perfect, because we can start with Thing Builder. If it doesn't work, I will just write this snippet by hand, and in 80% of all the time, it works perfectly with Thing Builder. And now comes the question. If we have the button here, okay, if I click on the button, what should happen? So from where is the link between the button created by Thing Builder to my code? Question so far? Am I too fast or too slow? All right, okay. So no news are good news, right? So like Unix. So the cool story is, first, what fxml does, in fxml, the first line of code, you can specify your class. And this class is my presenter. Okay? So what it means, fxml loader is able to instantiate your presenter. So and this is what I said, inversion of control. What it means now, the generated code is dependent on your code and not vice versa. And this is actually a beautiful hack. Oh, okay. Okay? So, and now because JavaFX creates your presenter, it has the instance, and is able to inject whatever you want to your class. So you can just inject a button to your presenter, and you are done. Or you can, in fxml builder, say, hey, action event, button, just call the class, I don't know, onSave. Okay? What it actually means is that if someone clicks OK button, either I have reference to the button if I like, or a method, any method you like, on the presenter gets called. Okay? So what it actually means, the presenter is by no means dependent on fxml builder. In worst case, it is only dependent on a fxml annotation, on a single annotation with the name fxml, which is perfect for enterprise because we are not dependent on strange tools.
How's the presenter to be injected with like services or things like that involved?
Perfect question. So you get almost 2 t-shirts for this. So the question is how the injection is working, right? So yeah, we talk about this. So fxml, I am waiting for the final slide, so I will show you everything in source code. And the answer is, I'm using IntelliJ right now because I use lambdas. This is my open source project called LightView, and I just use lambdas for fun, and that means this that doesn't understand lambdas now. But what you see here, there are packages with the naming, and this is the annotations of what it means. We have a presenter, method presenter, with lots of UI, which is injected as fxml, and we have a method, you see here probably, also @inject dashboard model, and this @inject comes with, is actually standard dependency injection inject. It comes with JavaFX inject. So it's the same CDI inject or Spring 3 inject or Juice or Maven 3. Yeah? And the question is how this actually working, because the fxml loader instantiate my presenter who injects the method monitoring. And the nice story is there is a let's show you the class, the framework class. In JavaFX, there is one very important method. The fxml loader has so-called controller factory. And this is another inversion of controller of control. The nice story is I'm passing here, I call back and say, look, fxml loader. If someone needs a class of the type, I will create a class for you. And now you can integrate here Spring, Juice, whatever you want. Now you have dependency injection in all the presenters with single line of code. Okay? So the key to dependency injection is a method in fxml loader, and the name of the method is setControllerFactory. You provide a callback, and what fxml loader does, it reads the fxml. I can show you how it looks like. It reads the fxml, and there is fx controller, a standard AGB presenter, and it instantiates the class. But to instantiate the class, it looks for callbacks. Is there any callbacks? Like, oh, I found a callback. Callback create the presenter for me, and I created the hook, right? So, questions so far? So there's two levels of inversion of controls, but actually, don't think about this is just one method. So, and you have to know setControllerFactory is actually the idea. Questions? Are you satisfied so far? So I started with Google Juice. And it worked. The problem with Google Juice, it is exactly not convention over configuration. So what I would like to have is, I would like to have the following. I would like, where's my method presenter here, to inject method monitoring. And now the method monitoring is a service, just a POJO, and there's only one. So I don't like to specify that there is only one. And there was no way for Google Juice to do this. I even asked a Google engineer, say, okay, you can do it, but it's a little bit harder. I was like, okay, then no Juice. And what turns out, implementing dependency injection, which is just singleton-based, is half page of code. So I implemented my own injector, which is very, very simple, and this is the second class, actually, in the framework. So the framework is open source, so you can use it or not, but the point is you could inject, use here Spring, Juice, Weld, whatever you like. You don't have to be dependent on my class. But what I'm showing you right now, the whole principle is based on one class, actually, right? This is actually the funny story. So the injector. So how the injector looks like. Instantiate presenter with class and returns an object. And you can imagine I'm searching for @inject annotation, and yeah, this is actually the dependency injection logic. This is the whole code, actually. And what I'm doing, because it's lightweight, I have to cache all the presenters and all the models. And for testing, I created a method forgetAll. So at any point of time, I can say everything is forgotten, and yeah. But there is no actually singleton. This is flyweight pattern. So the injector maintains all presenters and models, and they exist only once. So for developers, looks like it is a singleton, but it is actually not a singleton, which is very important, because what I can do right now is to test everything I like, because the method monitoring here, for instance, what I could do in my test, I could say, okay, I don't invoke post-construct, so there is no client, and I could mock out the client with Mockito, for instance, or JMock, or whatever. Okay? So this is the service, the business delegate. The model, the dashboard model, is my presentation object. And what you see here, dashboard model consists of some string properties, observable set, and object property. So the great story with JavaFX is, so what we have in JavaFX, we have bindable properties. And because bindable properties, or JavaFX comes with JDK update 21, we have now bindable properties for everything. So effectively, you could use the properties for whatever you want. There's no JavaFX specific, it's a part of JDK right now. JavaFX is shipped with JDK, starting with JDK 7 update 21. And this is a presentation model. The dashboard model is presentation model. What this is, I will show you in my last day stress testing. This is actually the JavaFX front end for my Lightfish project, which monitors an application server. This is actually the source code from this. And I cannot show you my real business code because of NDAs. I'm consultants, always have trouble with that. So I have to show you something which is open source. Okay? So, but the idea is there is a dashboard, consists of all the monitoring data. It's about 50 different statistics from Glassfish. And what I have here, string properties, the server URI. What it means, if someone changes the state of the server URI, because it's bindable, all views are changed as well. Okay? And next interesting idea is the object property here. So what object property is, you see the snapshot, and the snapshot is, in my case, the domain model. So the snapshot is the true domain model which comes from the server. And what I can do right now is, I can say, if the snapshot changes, notify everyone, because it is bindable property. And the next observation in JavaFX is you can build very narrow interfaces. So what it means is, in Swing, we would have to build an interface on expose everything with get string, and change it or whatever. In JavaFX, we could do something like we expose the domain model as object property. If the domain model changes, all subscribers get notified. What I'm experimenting right now is with additional naming conventions, because what you could do is you can say every presenter has one input and one output. Something is coming in, something is coming out. And this is actually really beautiful because you have one interface for everything. So you can combine presenters and so forth. So the bindable properties are really, really interesting for enterprise applications, because without them, you would have to expose everything with several getters and setters, which is hard work. With JavaFX, we can reduce that because we can just expose the properties, which represent a set of getters and setters. Questions so far? Everyone satisfied? So there is one problem, how to bootstrap that, right? So you have lots of XML, lots of presenters, and lots of other stuff. So how to start with that? And the idea is it always starts with the app. This is a typical starter in JavaFX. And as you see, this is actually legacy, so I will have to show you somewhere. So what you're always doing, the views. We didn't actually explain the view. So the nice story is all the views are empty per default. You could do something in this, but right now it's just sufficient to be empty. What it means is this view inherits from fxml view, and fxml view is this what you saw before. It's the whole logic with the fxml loader and so forth. It means if you do something like new fxml view, it will load the CSS, the XML, whatever needed, and you can access the node. This is the main idea. So you have to inherit it from that, and because of the name of the view, we know in which package we are running, what the name of CSS, what the name of XML loader. This is actually the whole mechanics behind conventional configuration. So again, it sounds complicated, but it's the easiest. It is very, very easy. It's not even a framework. It's just a small hack, but it works surprisingly well. And I don't know. Actually, I hacked it on a weekend, and on Tuesday I got a message like, Afterburner is great. You use it for X-ray image processing in U.S. hospital or something. Oh man, I hacked it last weekend. Be careful what they're doing. So, but it is really used in projects, even in hospitals in the U.S. somewhere. It's probably someone here which okay. This was be careful, but yeah, this is really strange. Yeah, because I could delete the repo as well. There's one button delete and there's over. So be careful with dependencies, with external dependencies. And so the idea is you get the view. And the presenter gets instantiated by fxml loader. And I would show whether there is something more complicated. You see, you can inject pull monitoring other presenters because they are also singletons. So you can inject presenters everywhere. You can inject services or whatever. And here, for instance, I would like to have multiple instances of the pull view because there's a whole dashboard and there is no min pull, max pull, and multiple pulls on one dashboard. So what you can do, you can just create the views with new and ask the view to get a presenter. And you have the presenter here. And now what you can also do, is it here somewhere? So here, I just go statistics panes, get children clear, add, and I ask the view to get the first node. So what it means in worst case, in case scene builder would die, I would have to implement the method getView by my own. So I will provide my own classes, my own class hierarchy, and so forth. Okay? That's actually the basic idea, the walkthrough through the through model view presenter. Any questions?
What are you doing here with EJBs? You're just showing what EJBs are.
There are no EJBs here. Absolutely not. The EJBs are on the server.
Yes.
And what EJB could do, it could expose, in worst case, core by interface. So the service would wrap the core by interface. So in the post-construct method would be something like initial context lookup and portable object remote narrow. With SOAP would be a SOAP service and Rust. So there is absolutely no dependency on EJBs. What I just wanted to reuse is add inject annotation and not reinvent it. So this is actually the main idea. So you can use Spring, Juice, whatever you like on the client side. I just find out that Juice was not suitable because of conventional configuration. And Spring was a little bit too complicated. So, and one class is actually not a huge deal. So you can replace that if you like. Very good question. T-shirt, of course, afterwards, yeah.
So, in the methods view, fxml files.
Yeah.
Can I add any logic?
Yeah.
Can I add a button then logic without affecting the code on the fly?
On the fly.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Whether in fxml view I could change the behavior of the fxml view. And the answer is yes, there's one method called getView. You could override the method and use a half which is created by SymBuilder and add your own stuff. But the view is not meant to implement business logic, presentation logic, sorry. The presenter, this is the job of the presenter. And about testability, yeah, you can fire up presenter and test it. But the main reason is not testability. The main reason why doing that is actually productivity. And last year, I showed you similar talk with LightView, and it created without dependency injection. And now I refactored the application 50% to this. And I have to say, I'm twice as productive as year before with this simple pattern. Because you can do always the same view package. 3 files, fxml, CSS is optional. With CSS, you can skin everything. And you can draw with the SymBuilder the application, and you can even decide how far you can go. You can draw everything in one huge page. What I don't like, for me, is per package I have one fxml file which represents this snippet. So if you, I would like to show you this. So if I just I think it's here. No. Did I close that? No. So this delight view, if I open, for instance, methods, you get the same integration with NetBeans or Eclipse. So I just wanted to use lambdas because, so you see this is the table, just the table. And if we go to the table, you see here there are names like code is fxid name. If you use the same field name in your code, it will be injected by JavaFX. This is the whole deal. And you can decide how far you can go. I could build the whole UI or whatever. And everything is actually, the whole application is drawn by SymBuilder, and the pieces are put together in the presenters. And this is actually unique. You can only do it with JavaFX. In Swing, it was impossible. There was no such tooling to do this. Okay?
So in this case, you wired in your controller under the properties, right?
Yeah, there's a table column. So what interesting here, there's a whole table. But I'm not interested on table at all. So I'm in the, I think in the method, right? So it means I have in my presenter, I inject just the columns. Not even the table, just the columns. Because I use then data binding here to bind to my method statistics, which happens to be the domain model. Okay? So it's hard to say what it is. It is, there is another pattern from Microsoft called Model View View Model, MVVM. And this is actually very, very similar to this, MVVM, Model View View Model. But it's a very confusing name. So I think it's better to stick with Fowler and say the presentation model is the model from the presentation, and our domain model, which is very similar to JPA object on the server, is this domain model which comes from the server. This is actually why I don't like MVVM a lot. Yes?
Just review for me one more time. Whose responsibility it is to call a service, and whose responsibility it is to translate the domain model coming from the service into a presentation model?
Yeah.
Who's doing that marshalling?
Okay. So of course it depends. I'm a consultant, but the presenter, in the presenter you would usually inject a service, and what the presenter does is I don't know whether this presenter does it, But you would find if you have a button, there is no button in the view. I have a button in the toolbar. I will show you later. If I click the button, there will be no button injected, just a method called as an action listener, an ordinary method. And in this method, you will call the service. Yeah, and now I did. You have several options. Sometimes happens the following: you are invoking a presenter, which is void. This you're invoking a service, which is void. In this void method, the service injects a presentation model. It feeds the data to presentation model, and then all the dependent views are updated. This is for charts, tables, reports. Perfect. So if you get something more complicated, you can do the following. You get from service and domain object back, and you can pass the domain object to other presenter. So you can communicate between presenters. This is also what I did here. Right? Or you can say, service, give me the object property, and wire this object property with a presenter. It's also what I did here. For instance, I have a table which is CRUD, create, read, update, delete. What you can do, expose 4 object properties for each operation, and then you are actually done. You know, with the semantics of this, you can populate the views from the object property. So what it means is the service is just a business delegate, and you can go a little bit dirtier and say, okay, this business delegate knows presentation models. It is very productive, but it's not the purest view of things, but it worked perfectly. And I mean, the main, and what you can do, of course, in unit tests, you can mock out the presentation models altogether. Right? Because they are dependent, but you can mock it out. So there's actually, I would say, there is no issue in maintainability. If you think about this, most of the presentation models are throwaway objects because they change always in case the view changes. On each new request, you will have to, to do something with them. So, this strong isolation or decoupling would be counterproductive, I think.
Are you doing anything specific to deal with threading, thread models, especially when you're doing back-end?
Okay. It's not implemented here. It is implemented in another project called AirPad. And what the AirPad does is a real-time editing tool, what I use in workshops to spread the links. And the problem is the AirPad is based on Hazelcast. And Hazelcast is an in-memory grid model. So if you launch the AirPads, they communicate with each other. And the problem is it happens in another thread. And this would be another integration, for instance, JMS. So let's say you have JavaFX and would like to push data via WebSockets, JMS, or whatever, and you get always another thread. What you will have to do then is the service will be run in the thread of Hazelcast and invoke with platform run later to some wrapper. This is actually why I'm using lambdas here, because this is very beautiful. And it invokes, dispatches it translates on message in JMS to a proper method call. And this proper method call, proper method call is probably a bindable property again. So this is here a snapshot. Something comes with the server, which is implemented as long polling every 2 seconds, right? So every 2 seconds, I have to invoke my business logic. And the problem is it could be another thread. It is not in long polling, but if it weren't WebSockets, it would be another thread. So then, in the method, so I just interpret the message, and use platform run later. I think it's like swing utilities invoke later. It's exactly the same principle. And you have one block of code, and you're just dispatching to business method. In the business method, you have bindable properties, and all views are automatically changed, if you like that. If not, you can just get or whatever. So JavaFX allows 2 models, push and pull. So this is also responsibility for the service. Thank you for that, because you have the threading in one place. And in my dependency injection, everything is scope singleton or application scope. Because if you think about this is actually why I implemented dependency injection by my own. Usually it's crazy to do this, but on the client you can do this because there's just one user and just everything is global. So you can on the server never implement your own dependency injection framework. It's the beginning of the end. On the server. On the client it's just the beginning, right? Other question? Yeah. Yeah, I post construct. I show you this so you won't get a t-shirt for this. Injection somewhere, you have to help me. I'm reacting to post construct and invoking inject and initialize. Initialize. Is there somewhere post construct? I don't see it. Where is it? Yeah, okay. Post construct and pre-destroy. Initialize, okay, I forgot this. So I just refactored it afterwards. So there's one method, initialize and pre-destroy, and just passing the post construct and pre-destroy JSR250 annotation, and it's just using regular reflection. So how it works is get method, is annotation present, post construct, if yes, invoke or not. This is just simplest. So the whole dependency injection framework are 150 lines of code. So there's nothing. I don't like that. I would prefer to use Juice, but with Juice I would have to modules and binding, and then I don't need injection anymore with that. Other questions? Now, how it's built is also interesting. And the build is Maven, is standard build. What's interesting for JavaFX is I'm using the Shade plugin to be able to create a single jar. So in my project, I'm dependent on JAX-RS client, JSR2, and Afterburner, 2 classes. And what I hate is to deploy 10 jars to the client because everything can go wrong. So there are actually 2 Maven plugins. One is called Shade, and the other one is Assembly plugin. So what I do is they create one single jar, which is perfect for JavaFX. So I always, also in my swing time, always deploy to one single jar to the client. And there is some minor tweak to do. What I like is have everything in the package. So I have one package called, customer, and I would like to have this fxml files and CSS in source main Java, not spread into, because it's inconvenient. So what you have to do a little bit, you have to tweak this in the resource section. So you have to say, search for XML and CSS in source main Java and not source main resources. This is the only, but other than that, it's standard Maven build. And why is this so strange? Because so long. It's not strange. 150 lines of code. Why it's so long? Because I have license plugin which creates the Apache license headers and so forth. So a little bit more infrastructure. But usually you wouldn't do this in enterprise projects. So this open source is called LightView on GitHub. So go GitHub Adam Bean. You can download everything. And this is the source code of the application. So we did that. Build. Maven 3 for enterprise, web start, and applets are dead. I didn't use them for years. And with the whole security circus, I don't use this. So what we use in my project, actually 2 approaches. One is just to zip everything and ship to client. It worked perfectly with batch file and hard class path. And the other one, with JDK 1.7, there's native JavaFX packager. The tool is called JavaFX packager. You have it already on your disk. And what this tool does is it creates on Windows an exe archive with self-contained JDK and the application. So nothing can go wrong. And the funny story is Oracle employees submitted such a thing to Apple. And you can now download Ensemble, if you have an Apple, Ensemble application for free from App Store. And this is actually JavaFX packaged that way. So it was even compatible with App Store requirements. So I would say native packaging is the way to go. And there are two options, with installer and without installer. So in my case, I can go and say Java -jar and start my application. Or you could just use the installer, right? Just double click and it will install everything on demand. One problem with that is if I run on Mac, I get the DMG. If I run on Windows, I get exe. So there's no way for one Maven to create everything. So you will have to restart the Maven on different platforms to get all the deployers, installers. So we are almost done. This is the resources. This is the Afterburner, that's just framework, actually 2 classes. And what we do not have time for is another very interesting thing is for form input validation in JavaFX. Very briefly, all the object properties have a higher level API. And the higher level API is like and, or, not, and so forth. So what we did with JavaFX, just imagine a form with first name, last name, street. What you could do then, you have string property, string property, string property. What we did is the following. We say like name, not empty, and first name, not empty, and street, not empty, and bind this to button enabled. And what this is actually, if you think about this, is reactive programming. So there is no business logic left. Whatever you are doing, you're changing the state automatically of the application. So, and we were able to, to process complex forms just with the higher level binding API, which is perfect for input validation. Without that, you will have to have huge blocks with if else, if else, if else. Very hard to test. With that is perfectly to test because you can just launch it in unit test and just provide the values directly. So for input validation, the presenter should be isolated, and this is very true in this application.
I think we can use JavaScript also.
Yeah, what you can do, always can do, has nothing to do with this. You can always use JavaScript. This is the default language for event handlers in Scene Builder. Because JavaScript is JSR 292, this JavaScripting for Java, scripting for a Java platform. And you can use JavaScript per default or Groovy, whatever, as event handlers. So I hope it was not too boring. It's a pragmatic view of model view controller. It works very well. What is to do? I'm just working now on the input and output properties to standardize a little bit more. The feedback of developers were great. So we have the first time, something very simple to understand. Two classes, every kind of look like, so there is nothing hidden. And it works perfectly for rather boring applications. In consumer space, it wouldn't probably work because in consumer space you have often just one page, not lots of grids, nothing, just one page and very simple apps. But the more views you have, or tabs or whatever, the easier it's get to have something like this. Any questions left? I think we have 5 minutes to go.
Have you looked into the OpenDolphin framework?
A little bit. I would use OpenDolphin as well, but there's lots more going on then. And if you imagine in enterprise, the simpler the thing you are introducing, the more chances you have to adoption. The more magic involved, often it gets rejected. This is the problem in my project a little bit, And this is as close as only possible on standard. So I try to reuse inject, post-construct, and so forth. Okay, if someone needs a sticker, please, and T-shirts for question. So I come here and you get a T-shirt.
Can I have a T-shirt?
This is not the right question. In the next talk, I have other T-shirts for my next talk, so come to the next talk. It's a little bit more serious about Java EE. Also boring, no animations, no transformations, just stuff. So, thank you very much. See you in half hour.